As I mentioned, my name is Anita Levels. I'm one of the Civil Rights Outreach Coordinators with the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission. And as we get our night started, we are really honored to have our Executive Director here with us tonight, which is Chad D. Lassiter. He's going to open us up with some opening remarks.
Thank you so much, Anita. An extended welcome to everyone who's in this beloved community virtual space. I don't believe in hierarchies, but I do want to personally and professionally shout out Corporal Allen, who's been part and parcel along with his colleagues, Brother Slayton and Brother Green, who work for the PA State Police and really assisting PHRC in the early days of my tenure here as the executive director. And even up until this moment, I always feel that it's important to show a form of gratitude. Let me also thank Anita and Amanda Brothman, who organized this, and Cheryl Meck, our Director of Civil Rights. January 24th, I believe, if I'm correct, we celebrated 2 years of having a Civil Rights Division here at the PHRC, modeled after the United States Department of Justice Office of Civil Rights Community Relations Services, with infusion of what we do under the PHRA, using the model of Martin Luther King Jr., Rabbi Abraham Yahshua Heschel, as well as others. I wanted to open up with a quote from Dr. King, because I come out of that King tradition. King said, "Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter." Once again, our lives begin to end the day that we become silent about things that matter. King also went on further to say, how did we become maladjusted? How did we become maladjusted? How do we just simply sit around and accept some of the things that we see occurring? This panel, I can guarantee you, is an amazing panel. We do research. We just don't put people on panels. So we do research on who people are. And I would just encourage all of us to put on our metaphoric seatbelts and get ready for a learning experience. Before we do that, I have multiple identities, and I'll be really brief. And the identity I want to put on right now is that of a college professor. There's a book called The State of White Supremacy, Racism, Governance, and the United States. This is a powerful book. This is a powerful book that I would recommend if you have some time to read. There's another book, Breaking White Supremacy, Martin Luther King Jr. and the Black Social Gospel. Very, 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 very powerful book that I think is needed in this moment as well. There's another book entitled Why Anger is Essential, Why Anger is Essential to Anti-Racist Struggle, The Case for Rage. There are some things that we should be mad about. There should be some things that we are really incensed about. And I'm not going to say that the rage should be controlled. We certainly, for me, don't want the rage to be what we saw on January 6th. We know what we saw with our eyes. There's another book entitled A Field Guide to White Supremacy. A Field Guide to White Supremacy. Really good book. And lastly, and thank you for indulging me, much to their dismay, I have a lot of great nephews and great nieces in my family, and all of them who are over the age of 12, and there are a lot, they were asked to read this book, Hypocrisy in America, The Veil of White Supremacy. It's about 112 pages. It's on like a 5th or 6th grade reading level. Lastly, because we're not divisive here at PHRC, you'll learn from these experts here in this space as well, that saying that the challenge that we see right now is a challenge as it pertains to white supremacy is not an indictment against white individuals. But we have a white supremacy problem in this democracy. And our colleague from the Southern Poverty Law Center and others will unpack that so that you can see the roots of hate, the roots of racism, the roots of evil, as well as here in the state of Pennsylvania with the number of white supremacist nationalist groups that we have. Anita, as always, I may be the executive director, but I am a servant leader. Thank you for allowing me a voice in this moment. And lastly, thank you everyone for being here in this evening, braving the weather, broadband issues, and things of that nature. We continue to be, as we continue to become here at the PHRC, building that beloved community. Thank you so very much. And once again, welcome.
Thank you, Executive Director Lassiter. We appreciate your words as always, poignant, and thank you for sharing those resources. Here at the PHRC, we're always encouraged to read. always encouraged to be knowledgeable. So thank you so much for sharing once again that information. Also want to make sure that we're aware that I'm here on virtual today, that this is recorded. So if you do not want to be recorded, just want to make you aware of that. You will be recorded, that you want to leave with the wiretap act, that you will be recorded. This will be possibly on our YouTube channel. So this is a recording on tonight. So please be aware of that. Now I want to now make you all aware that we have our director here with us, the director of the Civil Rights Outreach Division, which is our director, Meg. And she's going to speak a little bit more about our division and the purposes of our No Hate in Our State Town Hall. So Director Cheryl Meg.
Thank you so much, Anita. Good evening, everyone, and thank you again for joining us in this space. Let it be a symbol of how we can stand in solidarity across the state, even if in the virtual space. And for that, I'm very excited for tonight, as you will hear from phenomenal experts in their area of expertise. I wanted to just give a little bit of some baseline information that these No Hate in Our State town halls are designed to bridge the divide, foster any further understanding, and then help give a safe space for people to ask their questions, share their commentary, but we want to do so with a level of civility. And while this was a catalyst incident that we will go into further why we are here tonight, general understanding of the root to hate and white supremacy in our nation, and let alone our state, you will understand that this is a repeated pattern across many different systems and many people are affected. And so while we are here in this moment, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to be with us, engage, ask the questions, listen, learn, and let us come out of this space a better person in many ways than what we came into it with, right? So thank you so much. I hope we enjoy this evening together, and I'll turn it back over to you, OC Levels.
Thank you so much, Director Meg. Thank you. It's really important we understand that this is a space of civility, but it's also a space that our executive director also mentions about love, truth, and kindness. In the middle of that is truth. And so that's why we have our scholars here with us tonight. And we also, so we're going to start bringing that out, and we're going to talk about our scholars. And now we're going to just dig right into that and introduce our scholars that we have here to speak about why we're here tonight. And so we're going to introduce them. The first one that we want to introduce is Jacob Beaters. He's our senior research analyst specialist from the Bridging Divides initiative from Princeton University. Jacob, welcome. And we also have Dr. Alan Milwicki. We have large bios for them. Instead of me reading each and every one of them, I'm going to put them in the chat. So I'm going to say their names and say blurbs of their bios and put their bios in the chat so that you all can read them in your spare time. How's that? And then we also have Dr. Alan Milwicki, which we've had the esteemed honor of working with them interagencyally with the Southern Poverty Law Center. Currently, Dr. Milwicki serves as the senior research analyst for the Intelligence Project at the Southern Poverty Law Center. And we've had the honor of having Dr. Milwicki work with us in December when we were working with another community with information regarding the KKK. So Dr. Alan Milwicki, thank you for being with us again this evening. And also our dear friend closer to home from the Pennsylvania State Police, Corporal Aaron Allen. Corporal Aaron Allen serves as the Heritage Affairs Liaison Officer. And he works with, hold on for a minute, my computer is.
You want me to go into it?
I know you can. In this role, he works with the local and state and federal, bandwidth and areas with federal agencies to investigate and oversee and respond to hate crimes and bias-related incidents and incidents involving racial tension throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And so Corporal Aaron Allen is the one we really want him to speak specifically about hate crime legislation within Pennsylvania. And then even closer to home, we have Attorney Joseph P. Murphy, who is immigration law within the Charleroi community, which we really thought it was really, of course, important whenever we do our virtual town halls to have our community in our spaces to speak about what's going on with the boots on the ground there. So we have Attorney Joseph P. Murphy, who will be speaking with us today about his experience working with immigration law there in Charleroi, in the Charleroi community. So we're going to start with you, Attorney Joseph P. Murphy. Is that okay?
Of course.
I know we spoken on the phone about what your experience has been like there in Charleroi recently, and just ongoing with the immigration community, working with immigration law. Would you mind speaking a little bit more about that?
Sure. I've been working in Charleroi since late 2019. I originally ended up there working on a program for Liberian refugees. And really, what a nice town. They generally, up until recently, really did a great job handling immigration, better than really any other place I've worked. And I worked in a lot of small towns helping refugees integrate into society. It's not always an easy job. People push back. I'm sure you guys know a lot more about that than I do. I'm not a law enforcement or academic, but I'm right there in the street with these people at their homes, working with businessmen, migrants, people looking for work permits, things of this nature. Um, in the summer of 24, we had that whole business with the speech with the cats and the dogs, and that's really where this thing kind of first went off the rails. I'm pretty visible as a feature of Charleroi life. I'll meet people in McDonald's or on ball fields, at workplaces, and really that's when people really started people of the town threatening me, showing up at McDonald's, posting things on the internet about my home. Why don't you take immigrants into that house where you live with a wife and two small children? But really spooky kind of stuff, even directed at me. Um, it seemed to calm down really pretty quickly in Charleroi. And that really gave me some hope because it seemed to have gone back to that sort of baseline, a small town doing a really great job with migration until lately. And that's what we have, this environment of fear. I don't look at it from a law enforcement perspective or an academic or activist perspective. I look at it through the eyes of my clients. And as a lawyer, sometimes you get the disease, you pick up the client's cause. Um,
Mhm.
what happened isn't just an insult caught on camera. It's a pattern we're seeing more and more provoke, publish, distribute. Um, the intimidation is the product. These videos are just the delivery mechanism. And that's what's going on here. Thousands of people have seen this thing. And I imagine half of them will hopefully, a lot less than half of them were emboldened by it, but a good number of people were incensed and a certain number of people were terrified. And that's what fear does to a small town. It does a lot of things, but it makes society, institutions, life in general seem less safe. That feeds a shadow economy. People retreat from traditional housing, maybe don't make doctor's visits or court appearances. That makes them easy prey. Okay. I had a couple notes here. Something that's uncomfortable but important is that both sides profit off this outrage. You've got one side here that is talking about an immigrant invasion, and another side that's talking about a predatory government. And, they're continuing to teach everybody that's watching these videos that the situation's out of control. They're monetizing fear and using this issue. The important thing for, um, my clients who are watching this, immigrants who are watching this, is to keep your head. Don't let these clips trick you out of a normal life. This country isn't that bad. Or that's what this whole podcast is about. It's about we care about you. Um, but that's the thing, right? What we're trying to do here is preserve normal life, and I think um, the opposite of hate isn't a slogan. It's a community that keeps functioning, and that's what I'd like to see down in Charleroi. I don't want to see people afraid to go to Walmart or other businesses or out in public. I don't want people afraid to come visit me because people are after me. I want people to assert their rights to the extent that they have them to get immigration benefits here in the United States, regardless of what somebody in Walmart said to Queenie. That's not the way it works here, and that's not the way it will work if you're my client. A couple other thoughts, and I really don't want to get down on the people of Charleroi. In any situation like this, you will find malcontents at the fringes. There was somebody that put up nasty flyers during the cats and dogs thing in the summer of 24. And there's people that drive by and yell out the window, but this is a pretty outrageous example. And the concern is, that more people will be intimidated and more people will be emboldened, and that separation from ordinary civilization that we love so much is going to happen faster. Um, right. Got a couple of notes here. Right. This is not citizen journalism. This thing that this guy did, this is rage monetization. Short clips stripped of content optimized to make people angry. Content consistently portrays one group as outrageous and one group as victims. It's not a neutral observation. It's narrative manufacturing, whether the creator admits it or not. But I really like that town. I really like the people. And again, overall, I would say it's done better than any other small town I've worked in. I'm very happy with Charleroi, and I'd hate to see it go down that abyss of fear and destruction and people hiding from normal life, because it's a great town. I don't have anything further to speak about right now, but certainly I'm sure there'll be comments and questions.
Sure. Thank you so much, Attorney Murphy. And I think when we spoke, you were mentioning, and I actually also spoke with another gentleman from the Haitian Resource, I think, Initiative. He was mentioning that too. He was mentioning that, we're okay here, we're okay here. And almost as if what happened was pretty much sensationalized. And it sounds as if what you're saying is also pretty much the same thing too. And
Yes.
that which that's what I'm hearing you saying.
No,
And so
no, that town did a great job there, and I don't know how. I wish I was, I'm not out studying this stuff. I'm not polling people. I'm I'm in the back of the African supermarket trying to help people get legal. But I've thought many times, we were joking earlier, I was a poli-sci undergraduate. I wish I could figure out what it was about Charleroi that made it so able to do this. And it's not like it's a normal American town, a little bit nicer than some, a little bit not as nice as others. Standard blend of people, nothing unusual there. I wish I could figure it out, because that would be a nice thing to have for other towns.
sure. Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that. I do think I'm glad that you mentioned that. I'm also glad that Jacob is here and Dr. Alon is here too, because then they'll also be able to speak to the statistics of Pennsylvania in general. And I know Dr. Alon will be able to speak even more further about the stats of Pennsylvania and the anti-government groups and hate groups, and where Pennsylvania ranks with that within the state.
Well, I'm not suggesting they're not there. I mean,
So I know
well,
this
we
might
know
be
they're there.
sensationalized, but I think we can definitely talk more about, how those isolated incidents can also be a good time for us to have a conversation about the real numbers of that representation that's really happening here within the state of Pennsylvania too.
Propaganda of the deed can make these groups look a lot bigger than they are. And that's part of the use of it.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Attorney Murphy. Well,
My pleasure.
we have Jacob here with the Bridging Divides Initiative, and as mentioned, Jacob, you are the Pennsylvania lead at Princeton's Bridging Divides Initiative, an organization by which a part of the mission is working for a future where thriving communities are prepared to respond in periods of risk. Being the Pennsylvania lead, which I think is really interesting, that when I looked on the website, we have 50 states. There are only particular states, but Pennsylvania, you were the Pennsylvania lead. I think it's interesting that Pennsylvania is a state where you have to have a lead for, but you're the Pennsylvania lead researcher. What information should Pennsylvanians be aware of when it comes to risks, such as one that maybe Charleroi might have had experienced? And how should we, continue to respond, not just in Charleroi, but in general within Pennsylvania? Jacob, and thanks for being here tonight.
Yeah, of course. And thanks for having me and for organizing this on such short notice. I definitely want to reiterate the points that Attorney Murphy made and you made as well about some of the broader context. I have a few numbers, but I can kind of talk a bit about some of the larger context around white supremacist groups, hate activity within the state. So like you said, I focus from the Pennsylvania State Lead, so I focus exclusively on monitoring primarily for acts of offline political violence, hate-based incidents, and the sorts of trends that can drive political violence and can drive the sorts of contentious activity where political violence can happen, or that can otherwise prevent people from being in public life because they're intimidated. As again, Attorney Murphy was saying, people who remove themselves from the public sphere once they see, they're afraid of potentially being threatened for their identity out in public. So yeah, to kind of ground a bit of what Attorney Murphy was saying about these individual incidents. So one of the things at BDI that we track nationally is threats and harassment towards local officials. I know in this context it wasn't exactly that, but that does kind of help us understand broadly what sort of trends we're seeing, the numbers we're seeing, the sorts of things that are driving issue-based, the sorts of things that are driving threats towards people, harassment, whether online or in person, or people calling a local official, threatening them. So, one thing to kind of note in incidents like this is that, a major thing that drives threats oftentimes are local issues, locally grounded things, people threatening an official because of a zoning ordinance or something like that. But where we see a spike in threats oftentimes is when there is a prevalent national narrative that is really driving something. So, if we look at like the summer of 2024, when there was that extra focus on Haitian communities, it started in Springfield, that local context then fed into the national context, and there can be this self-reinforcing cycle where there's this this huge national attention on something. Local actors then can take advantage of that to try to advance their own agendas, try to monetize their social media in some contexts. They're in different individual reasons, but there's this kind of self-reinforcing cycle where they will take advantage of that, and then someone will like what we're seeing in Minnesota, someone will take advantage of a narrative targeting a particular community, and then show up at businesses owned by the Somali community, or in this case, target an immigrant business owner in the Charleroi area. So there can be this self-reinforcing cycle, which can lead to major spikes in threats. One of the incentives for people to take these videos targeting specific people is often to do, generally what we would call networked harassment. So bring attention to a particular local person, tying them to a national narrative. And then, that can bring down a wave of threats, harassment, and can really, can make someone, again, kind of remove themselves from public life, and, within the community can make people feel like there is this broader threat that's going on. So, we have seen a pretty, since I think we started collecting data around threats and harassment against local officials, starting in 2022. And we've seen, that it increased for several years. I think, sorry, I'm just taking a look at the numbers. 2024, it went up 2022, 2023, 2024, and then ducked a little in 2025, but still those numbers are particularly high when we're looking at threats and harassment towards local officials. With that being said, and just to put that in context, while we are seeing increased threats, we are not seeing organized activity at the sort of levels that we saw in 2020 by white supremacist groups, by militia groups, by these sort of bad actors, the Ku Klux Klan, Proud Boys, and all sorts of other groups, which there are several groups active in the Charleroi area. There's several more groups active across the state, which white supremacist groups, white nationalist groups, Christian nationalist groups, or all sorts of groups which either subscribe to hateful ideologies, have in some history of violent or contentious activity. But in 2020 there was a spike, kind of culminating around January 6th, but locally, there were militia groups showing up at racial justice protests. There were groups like, the Proud Boys showing up around election-related events and that sort of stuff. But year by year, since 2020, around like actually, organized people showing up in any significant number, that has decreased. So we have seen a steady amount of threats and harassment, but the actual getting out and organized activity is lower relative to the high in 2020. That doesn't mean that groups are not active. There has been I don't have exact numbers, but generally, there are a few groups active, and specifically looking in Western Pennsylvania, the sorts of activities we're seeing are intended to propagandize, intended to project a larger reach of these organizations, to make it seem like, again, taking advantage of these sort of periods of heightened tension, periods where there might be a tension on specific communities, like I think a Ku Klux Klan chapter, left flyers in 2024 when there was the Haitian panic around Charleroi. But generally, these are organizations which, are limited in their membership and are not necessarily coming out in any number, after their flyering. A lot of this is propaganda activity aimed at trying to recruit like-minded people or aimed towards a kind of broader audience online. And yeah, there are a few groups within the Charleroi area, within Pittsburgh, that kind of broader area that are active. But that's generally putting up stickers, putting up posters, hanging banners on highway overpasses, and then infrequently kind of gatherings, but we're talking maybe a dozen plus people. So I'm happy to kind of dig a bit more into that. On our website, we have a few more reports, particularly around the threats and harassment data that we have. And I know oh, sorry, Anita, go
Thank you,
ahead.
Jacob. So what I'm hearing is, so some of the isolated, or some of the provocative, provocative behaviors that we're seeing are ways of just garnering membership for the white supremacist group to garner. They're moving more online. And so when they're moving online, it's for, then what? Now that they're online, what is their motive for moving this this rhetoric online? What are they doing now that they're online? What's the motive now? Are they, they're strategizing online to do what then? Do we know what they're doing there?
Yeah, and I think Alon might have some answers here, not to throw
Okay,
him under the bus as well. But I mean, I'd say there's a few things. One, one, there are definitely people who there careers and
monetizing. Okay.
Yeah, people who have YouTube channels and stuff like that. There are people who have created channels and brands which are in part based on becoming the story themselves, I guess would be a way to put it. So putting themselves into these situations where, they are confronting people who may then push back, and then it becomes this kind of cycle where they are then the story, and then that can lead to, in a kind of smaller way. But yeah, there's a real incentive to that. But yeah, also in a smaller level where we are looking at these sort of groups, yeah, they're recruiting online. That's where a lot of like-minded people are. There are certain websites where you used to not be able to post publicly as a white supremacist organization. Now you can go on X and propagandize, and some of those videos might go viral or break outside of the specific bounds of a white supremacist account. So there's ways both to try to increase the reach of the organization, but also individual there's individual incentives for specific influencers who may be trying to build a brand based off of this sort of stuff. But yeah.
Thank you, Jacob. Thank you so much for that. I feel like I see Dr. Alon shifting in his seat, and he's like nodding. So we have to come to our friend Alon, please fold into that. I feel like I don't even want to ask you a question. I think you're just go ahead on dovetail with that. As far as I know, you know Pennsylvania very well. But I have to say this though, because I know with our when we do our PHRC overviews, we talk very much on the hate maps and the data that you all use with the hate map. Can you please alert our audience as to what the hate map is? I do want you to touch on this and the rank of Pennsylvania and anti-government groups and what that is. If you kind of lead a little bit, touch on that,
Sure.
and also talk about what it's mentioning.
Sure. Well, first of all, again, thank you for having me back. It's always a pleasure to talk with you all. I refuse to say y'all, even though I've been living in Texas for like 12 years. So that's just a hard pass. I grew up in the Northeast. It is you all. Sorry.
Go for it.
So our hate map is something we put out yearly. It's part of our year in hate. It's an SPLC, where all of it's part of one of the major products SPLC puts out every year, with all of our analysts from our multiple teams, the White Power, White Nationalist desk, which is where I'm situated. We have the anti-government desk and we have the mainstream desk. And what each of those desks do is they have individual analysts who track and monitor groups nationwide. And we basically pin it out on this map and tell you which groups are in which states, which ones of those groups, like for example in Pennsylvania, which ones have a specific location. Do we know the base of it? If we do, we give that a location. Otherwise, there are some that are statewide. Like for example, Pennsylvania, we have about 57 groups that we know to be local, that they're local chapters, that they have individual places like, for example, like there's an anti-government group called the Constitution Party. They have a space in Lancaster. We have, Moms for Liberty chapters all over the place. We have a group called Tactical Civics. And there's John Birch Society, Proud Boys. These are all things that are we know their specific bases, so we put the bases on there so you can be aware. There's is also 19 statewide organizations, and this means one of two things. One, it's unclear if they have a headquarters, or two, we know they're in Pennsylvania, and they don't necessarily have they don't have necessarily a base. They just operate everywhere. Or there might be multiple bases, because as Jacob pointed out, there's so much of this stuff that's online right now that there doesn't necessarily need to be a home base anymore. You can have like 19 people in the same organization that live nowhere near each other, but they can still coordinate very easily. So there is a definite disbursement of hate groups from all three of those desks across Pennsylvania. So it gives a grand total. This is just 2024. Our 2025 hate map will probably be out soon. But we have about 76 total groups for PA as of 2024. And I would imagine the number would probably remain somewhat static, just based on previous years and the current socio-political atmosphere of America right now being more, let's say, friendly towards these types of organizations and not necessarily needing to form an organization because there's a lot of their kind of talk that's in the mainstream right now. And like Jacob also pointed out, like a lot of these guys who lead these organizations like have their thumbs on the pulse. They know exactly what the right thing to say. I mean, it was within 2 days that it was, I believe, the Trinity White Knights flyered on the Haitian cats and dogs 2 days afterwards. So I mean, and not for nothing, the last talk I gave about the Klan here is there's something to keep in mind with them. While I know, your community has had two specific issues or two, if not three specific run-ins with the Ku Klux Klan, it's important to contextualize the Klan within the larger white power movement. The Klan is and has been a dwindling organization full of largely older white men, and is mostly not, I would say, included by the larger white power movement. They're mostly seen as sort of like a relic, and they're not necessarily as dangerous or as omnipotent as most people seem to think they are. Because the problem is when you think white supremacy in this country, you go bang to the Klan. And there were times where there were reasons for that. During Reconstruction era, number one was the Klan. During the 1920s, number one was the Klan. During the 1960s, there's a fractioning. There's no 100% one Klan anymore. There's a fractioning of clans. The Klan is still doing that. The Klan has basically been on a slow, long decay uh, for about 50 years right now. So are they still there? Yes. Can they be dangerous? Absolutely. Are they a big threat? I would hazard a guess at no. I would hazard an assessment at no, because they will rather do those sort of impersonal, flyering or shock value. Like they gave the business cards out to small children, you know, or the thing they did at the hospital. That they're not going to go for, uh, you know, big violent events anymore. Or if they have rallies, they're usually in like the backwoods somewhere that like nobody knows where it is, and they just have like 8 people burning a cross. And it's like, okay, you know, I don't know. So, yeah, I think that was all the question.
Mhm. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, just speaking to that, I was going to put in the YouTube link as you were with us in December 9th, speaking exactly what you're mentioning as far as the trends of anti-government groups in particular, the beliefs and the trends of the white supremacy groups and how they're behaving right now. And it's really interesting, the movement, I guess, of a lot of groups moving, trending online. But what I was asking is like when they go on, when they're on, now that they're online, what are they doing? What are they doing online? What is their marketing? What are their methods?
They're
Um,
mostly
that was
talk.
one of the questions.
There's a lot of silos. They mostly talk to themselves. There's a lot of like the Klan, for example, relegates itself to a platform called Stormfront, or they're occasionally on places like Gab. There was like a hot minute they discovered Facebook for the first time, and they were there for a little bit, but then they left it because reasons. But for the most part, they are relegated to these sort of white supremacy alt tech platforms. You will see them on X every so often. You do have to do some digging to find them on X, because you have to know who you're looking for. There might be an individual member that I might have been able to identify that is on X, but in large part, all they're doing is basically just like building up their own but beefing themselves up. They might be trying to recruit other like-minded people, but it's also in that space, whether they're on Gab or on Stormfront or on Telegram, they're already talking to a friendly audience, right? So they're already in the arena of people who already agree with them. So recruitment can happen, but I don't imagine it's that large in those spaces. And also there, like I said, there's a lot of white supremacy groups who don't think the Ku Klux Klan is relevant anymore. So you won't see a lot of like joint sort of meetings between like Klan groups and other organizations. You're more
Why
likely to
don't why
see
don't they think they're relevant with their legacy? They're such,
because it's it's
horrible
it's
legacy.
now they have an absolutely horrible legacy,
Yeah,
but it's
disgusting.
because the Klan fractured so badly after the Civil Rights Movement, and because
Hmm.
there is a Ku Klux Klan Act, and because people can identify them, and because it
Hmm.
is something that is, uh, it is it is not modern. They are not in modern spaces. They are not interacting in modern ways. They are keeping to their old ways and their old traditions, and those are just not effective anymore. It's not effective to, even flyering is ineffective. Flyering it's easy, but as we've seen, I have another colleague who tracks flyering, and there are organizations that flyer 15, 20 times more than the Klan. The Klan flyered in 2025 maybe about 12 times, and it was just the Trinity Nights and the Silent Nights. That's it. So they're not even doing that. So they're not even flyering. They're not actually interested in associating, because the Klan will have this idea of themselves that they are the only true American society. That has been a tagline of theirs since at least the 1920s, that they represent 100% Americanism, true Americanism. And when they marched in DC in 1925, they carried flags that said America first also. So they see themselves as like the original,
Wow.
and in large part the only. And even on top of that, I have about, for 2025, I believe I have about 12 active clan groups nationwide. And I can pretty confidently say that any one of these groups have at best, maybe at best, somewhere around 30 to 35 members in each one of them. And a lot of these groups are at loggerheads with each other. No, we're the real clan. No, we're the real clan. No, we don't do this or we do this. So there's not really a lot of cohesiveness among the clan. And you see that drop off from the 1960s to today. And that drop off has gotten uh, so much more like entrenched that it's like you're either, if you're a part of the Silent Knights, you are a part of the Silent Knights, and that's it. There are a few clan groups that try to reach out to other clans and they say, hey, whatever, but there's not a lot of collaboration across clan groups, which is actually a good thing for us because it means they're not organized, right? It's not like the 1920s, which had the absolute appearance of organized, where you have 4 to 6 million people nationwide. It was a definite appearance of organization there. If you peel back the surface and do some real historical analysis, there was much less organization than it seemed, but the appearance was, with that many people who were card-carrying members of the clan and that many people who were at least passively or actively supporting the clan, it was a much bigger deal. It seemed like a much bigger organization. Every other individual clan group from the 1960s on to today has, at least in some way, tried to assert that they're carrying the torch from the 1920s. Not a single one has ever even approached even 0.25% of that.
Yeah.
And that's an important thing to keep in mind. They are scary, but the idea that the Ku Klux Klan is synonymous with white supremacy is not only incorrect, but it does us a disservice because it means we're not looking at the other organizations that Jacob was mentioning earlier that can provide more or may have more organization or may actually be able to actualize some of these like threats or even marches or anything, because the Ku Klux Klan, from my analysis, ain't going to do it.
Thank you for that, Dr. Lon. And we're going to be moving with to Corporal Aaron Allen because we want to talk about the enforcement of this. And because you're mentioning after pretty much the Civil Rights Movement, which is the Civil Rights Act, helped to member the Ku Klux Klan because enforcement was now at play with this. And but I want to ask you one more quick question, and then everyone who's here, we're going to go to you too. You all, this is about you all. This is a town hall, so we'll definitely go to your questions too. But this particular incident in Charleroi, this person was presenting as a Nazi. So can you talk real briefly about Nazism versus KKK? I'm assuming there is a difference. I think.
Yeah, there's a huge difference. There's a
Okay.
huge difference. Nazism, neo-Nazism, Nazism will associate in some way directly with the policies or the ideas or the rhetoric with Hitler and the Third Reich. The Klan, in my mind, the Klan I would characterize more primarily as white nationalist, because they are America first and Americanists. And while they might think the Nazis had a good idea, if you could believe it, there were a lot of Klansmen who were against the Nazis because coming out and supporting Germany during World War II would be going against America.
Gotcha.
Nazism has a very distinct, or at least it did have a very distinct standard of beliefs, right? It was mostly focused on Jews. There were other communities that were targeted also. The Klan was conceived as initially an anti-Black group because of Reconstruction. Then it became an anti-immigrant group. Mostly it was, the second Klan was anti-Catholic. And then the third Klan, again, it went back to anti-Black. Now, does that mean that they were fans of Jews, immigrants, Catholics at any point in time? No. But the Klan has been a specifically domestic-focused organization, whereas Nazism is, and also to put it in perspective, Nazism loosely saying is it can present as a kind of somewhat cohesive ideology, if not theology now, because it did exist. The Holocaust did happen, right? They did have rules, they did have laws. Uh, the Klan doesn't know which way is up. They don't have any real organization. They don't have any real like uh, necessarily like bylaws. They might write their own little things every so often, but there's not really any um, outlined connection or outlined really just like other than we hate people who are not white Protestant men, right? Um, but Nazism is a much more, I mean, I would argue, unfortunately, Nazism is a much more alluring and in this case dangerous ideology because people point to what happened during the 1930s and 40s, and from their perspective, they would call it effective. And then there's also the fact that we are living in an unfortunately more and more digital age with AI doing what AI is doing, and Holocaust revisionism and Holocaust distortion and outright denial is certainly on the rise. And that is a direct, I would say that's direct response to those who saw, those who immediately after the Holocaust, as early as 1947, began saying this was fake. So there's a long trajectory of that. And unfortunately, ideas don't die, right? We might have defeated the Nazis in war, but the ideology and the theology that grew out of it is unfortunately still with us.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for clarifying. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Rowan. Appreciate you. All right. Corporal Aaron Allen, now that we're here, we had so much information regarding these ideologies of hate. And would you mind speaking to us about enforcement? I know we had a conversation about when approaching filing if you go to a police station, you say, hey, this happened to me. How can we enforce if someone comes up to us and says something to us? Or what can we do? What can someone in the community do to enforce a potential hate crime, if it is a hate crime or not? You do so well.
Sure. So first, I want to say thank you for having me, and I appreciate all of this feedback. I'm even learning things, and that's why I believe this is so valuable for our community members, because every single day we should be learning, especially in the era we're in right now. So good evening, everyone. My name is Corporal Aaron Allen. I currently work for the Pennsylvania State Police Heritage Affairs Office. Our office oversees, investigates, responds, and monitors any sort of hate crimes, bias-related incidents, or any acts of racial tension throughout the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Under Pennsylvania law, when we're talking about hate crimes, how it can be enforced is the ethnic intimidation enhancement and the institutional vandalism enhancement has to be attached to an actual crime under Title 18, the Crimes Code. So, for example, harassment can be charged, and ethnic intimidation can be attached to that now charge, which then categorizes that in our world, the law enforcement world, as a hate crime. It also enhances the actual level of crime. So let's just say harassment is a summary. Once that ethnic intimidation enhancement is attached to it, it now rolls it to a misdemeanor, and so on and so forth. If it's homicide, it could be attached to burglary, robbery, things of that nature. So a lot of community members think that ethnic intimidation and institutional vandalism can just be charged alone, and unfortunately it can't. It is actually an enhancement under Pennsylvania law to be attached to another crime. So I think it's very important to understand both of those enhancements, because I'll be honest, as a law enforcement officer, if I wasn't in this specialized unit, I didn't know that. And most of law enforcement officers don't know the difference between an actual crime or what makes actually something a hate crime. And that's very scary, just because we're not taught that. That's not the first on the agenda as a Pennsylvania state trooper or even a local law enforcement officer. Now, obviously, if they get called to something, they should do their own due diligence and research to make sure that they're investigating it right. But that's why, our unit is so special, because we work alongside local, state, and federal agencies in those cases. For example, I had a incident in a local school district. Resource officer gets a call. He has an incident where a African American student was taking a picture with a white student. That white student took the picture. He then photoshopped a monkey mask on his face, and then he blasted it out on social media platforms: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. Now, this African American student was brand new to that school. She actually relocated due to her trying to get better education. So she was mortified. She wanted to actually commit suicide. And this was such a big incident. And thank goodness the school resource officer had a positive relationship with myself and our unit, because he called before he charged anything. He called and said, "Hey, I have this," and we were able to work alongside each other to make sure the proper crime and incident was taken care of. So it was a harassment charge with an ethnic intimidation enhancement, and then now we were able to categorize it as a hate crime. So again, I like to say that all hate crimes are reported and they're done right, and the due diligence is done. But unfortunately, it doesn't always. And that's why these town halls, once again, that's why the resources that we have tonight speaking is so important, to make sure that people know how to actually report these said crimes. If somebody is a victim of a hate crime, or just any crime in general, especially if it's a hate crime, they have to immediately go to law enforcement. Not only that's why our unit is so public. Every town hall, I give my personal cell phone number. I know people think I'm crazy for that, but I care, and that's why it's so important that somebody can actually call us, the Heritage Affairs Office, and say, "Hey, I reported this to such police department. Can you help us, or can you guide us, or can you call them and make sure that they do the proper thing and they do the right thing?" And I don't want to come off as, hey, law enforcement isn't doing the proper thing. It's all about training. It's all about understanding how to properly document what crime is actually happening and being reported. And once again, in the 28-week police academy, I don't think we ever talked about hate crimes under the Pennsylvania State Police Academy. And again, that's why it's so important to have these said relationships in the community and with other local law enforcement agencies. So one, let's go to local law enforcement, make sure that they do their job. Two, I don't think it's a bad idea to also contact your local FBI, because again, there's the Pennsylvania law when it comes to hate crimes, and then there's a federal law when it comes to hate crimes. And I think it's very important that both of those entities are reported to, even if they don't do anything, even if the crime isn't there, it's still being documented. I tell people all the time, police are made to answer calls. That's our job, right? So don't think something is too small or too big to contact us and report it. The next thing I would say is, and just like Mr. Murphy, be an attorney that knows this stuff, because not only can things be invested criminally, but if it's a hate crime, it could be a civil matter as well. And that's why it's so important to have these relationships with attorneys that that are experts in this field, because the era that we're in, it can absolutely be both criminal and civil on both ends. And once again, I've worked with a lot of criminal hate crimes, but I've also referred them to attorneys that will help them in the civil matter. So I think that is the way to go. And I also think, don't just, if you report it, you don't hear anything. A lot of people, stray away. Oh, it's been reported, nothing's been done. yell it from the rooftops. That's what I always say. Call back, get an update, talk to a supervisor, make sure people are taking this stuff serious, because it is serious. So I just think that is the most important thing, is get it documented, get the right people on your team. Obviously, PHRC is a huge and great resource to also contact in said incident where a hate crime may have been committed. Mr. Lassiter, Miss Levels, every time you guys hear something, I hear something, we're bouncing it back, passing it back and forth, so we could work together on this and make sure that it's done properly. I always say that those days where, local law enforcement doesn't want to work with federal law enforcement or state law enforcement, and we all are working against each other, those days are over. We have had some great success with relationship building and helping one another when it comes to these said incidents. So yeah, hopefully I answered that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I think we're going to go to the our audience. I feel like we have, but I think it's important that we hear from folks with any questions that they may have, because that's what we're here for too. This is a town hall, and so I do, before we go there, panelists, do you want to do you have anything else that you might want to mention or kind of tie up real quick as far as anything else?
I didn't have anything further.
Thank you, Attorney Murphy. Are there any attendees here from Charleroi besides Attorney Murphy? By chance, there's a raise hand emoji potentially on your. Put in the chat by chance. Anyone here from Charleroi? Larry, hi Larry. Welcome, Larry. Glad you all are here.
There we go. Okay. All right. How are you?
Great, Larry. How are you?
Very good.
You're from
Thank
Charleroi?
you. I am. I'm a council member in the borough of Charleroi. I just want to make one comment. It hurts me to see that Charleroi is the focal point of something again, not in a positive light. This latest incident, which naturally has been brought up several times in this discussion, I just want to clarify something about that. Both parties, and I'm not going to name the names, but both parties that were involved in this disgusting incident, neither one lives in the borough of Charleroi, neither party. But Charleroi has been stamped with what has become seems like second. I don't want to say that, but not only is this incident disgusting, there's another incident that painted another black eye on the borough of Charleroi when one of the immigrant stores was posted a "No Whites Allowed" sign right on the door. So it just seems like we just can't get ahead in the borough of Charleroi without being painted with another black eye. And naturally, you guys with the PHRC, you had an event previously in the borough of Charleroi. I think the title was "No Hate in Our State." And, we thank you for putting on these type of events to bring some attention and education to light. But once again, I just wish that the borough of Charleroi could find a way to where we are not in the news anymore. If we're going to be in the news, sure would be nice if we could just one time in 2026 that it would be in a positive manner. So thank you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for being here, Mr. Larry. And if I could just say that, I understand, the frustration. It seems like you have a lot of love for Charleroi, and and I understand how you may take this personally, but as with the PHRC, we are seeing this as a moment for us to not just necessarily pick on Charleroi, but as a moment for us to, as an opportunity to empower Charleroi and even the neighbors of Charleroi, even the counties of Allegheny, it just the entire Pennsylvania as an opportunity to continue to empower Charleroi, because what we're also hearing is that the community of Charleroi has done a great job of even empowering the immigrants and all the folks there in the community of Charleroi also. So we also want to use this as an opportunity to alert the community of their power when it comes to the legislative protections that folks do have there. So we're not just using this as that, but we're also want to use this as the opportunity to empower Charleroi with their legislative protections that they have as well. So we want to make sure that you're aware of that as well. And we want to thank you for being here tonight.
And
Thank you.
if I could piggyback off that for a sec,
Sure.
because some of the things that I've discussed with you guys is, and Jacob and I have talked about this quite a lot, is how well your organization has responded to these things. Whether they're in Charleroi or wherever, you have, you set the bar very high for other communities in terms of response. You had a very prompt acknowledgement of what happened and public communication about it. You did community dialogue, and you engaged with leaders, both local and on a state level. You involved experts. Okay, so my imposter syndrome is going to let me say that. And I would say most importantly, your message has been rooted in education and not fear. You've been rooted in what do we learn from this? How can we improve on this? Not, putting down Charleroi, not putting down Pennsylvania, not putting down it and saying, this is a problem that we are currently facing. How do we grow from this?
Yeah.
How do we grow as a community together?
Yeah.
Right. And then this is what, like my third or fourth time with you guys. You've kept up, sustained action, and then, it sounds like you've talked to Corporal Allen and Attorney Murphy quite often, and now bringing in Jacob, who, you guys have done, literally like step by step, everything right. And I think it's not about highlighting that Charleroi is on a map for something wrong. It's that something awful happened to you guys, and how you responded was pretty damn good. And I think that's the takeaway that needs to be driven here, as opposed to, it sucks that it happened here, because it does suck, but it's happening all over the country.
Yeah, if I may, Anita, thank you so much for
Absolutely.
all those kind sentiments. I agree with all of what has been articulated. I want to go back to Larry, because I definitely hear you, Doc, but I don't want to underscore Larry's point, and I'm not saying you're underscoring Larry's point. I think your point is salient, Larry. Typically, we hear like a crime happens in a particular area, and people say, not in this neighborhood, right? Whether that's a suburban area or affluent area. And so what I hear Doc saying is that we should all be awakened to this moment that it happens. What I will say, though, is what is not shown is the work that we do on ourselves at the PHRC. I will be in my 8th year come May 5th. When I first got here, it was important that we did anti-bias training on ourselves. People push back against me by simply saying, but we're the ones that do the trainings. Okay, and we have biases. And so we do a lot of work with the Anti-Defamation League, with the Southern Poverty Law Center, and others who have come in to make sure that we deal with our isms, because we're all racialized and socialized. So Larry, when we were heading out to your catchment area, I'm almost certain that we had in the back of our mind whatever those built-in stereotypes that we just have as humans, because we all have a form of human brokenness. What I want to say to you, though, because I see you with the pit hat, but I remember you when you came to our No Hate in Our State, is that let's be very transparent. A few folk walked in that center and they were tight, and they were looking at us as that government entity. And let's also walk in truth, love, and kindness. We were looking at you all like, okay, because we had heard Corporal Allen that there were going to be protests there, and people didn't want us to come there, and 100 people were going to protest. The skies opened, and it rained, and it was metaphoric. And when we finished that No Hate in Our State town hall, you remember this, Larry, it was some time ago, and Director Met remembers this. A number of you asked us if we wanted to go next door and have a couple of beers. You remember that, Larry?
Yeah.
Attorney Murphy, you remember that?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
We couldn't have those beers because we were on the clock. But
Doesn't always
that
have to
was
be
a
that
form,
way.
that was a form of a beloved community, because even us as a government entity, we had to fight through the way that we view things. And that was a beloved community. And we came together, we listened to you all, we learned from you all listened to us, and we were leaving, for everyone that's in this virtual space, with everyone's permission, we were leaving out of there hugging one another. We hadn't known one another. We were high-fiving one another. We were, talking about coming back together and doing some things to galvanize the community. And this is not touchy-feely. This is not tiptoe through the tulips. This is not kumbaya. This is what hearing one another results into. And the last thing, because I want to hold space for others, let's not underscore what Doc has shared with us. And I think sometimes at PHRC, we give too much credit to the Ku Klux Klan. And this is educational for us, though we are the ones that are on the front lines. We give too much. Let's do a press release, and a lot of it is the art of propaganda. And so you have been able to highlight that for us. But Larry, I want to say that you all welcomed us, you all embraced us, and you all showed us what love looks like. The highest form of love is agape love. There was a lot of love in that space after we broke down how we viewed one another that night. And when we were leaving, I think folk were talking about, when is PHRC coming back? And I said, we want to transfer this social justice baton to you all. You all know what you need. And certainly PHRC will continue to be a friend of you all's. If you need us to come back out and do some trainings, if you need us to come out and just do something from a humanitarian standpoint, we're willing to do it. Anita, thank you for that space. I'm excited about soaring for justice with you all in this space even more.
Before we move on from this, Larry, thanks for stopping in. I work in his town. He's on the local government, and I think everybody will back me up here. I wasn't bad mouthing Charleroi. I was talking about what a great job you guys did with this migration and how much you've done better than any other town I've ever seen, and that's true. So you might have missed it, but we're not beating up Charleroi. I know as an elected official, you don't want the name of your town near any of these kind of subjects. So I get it, but we're not in here bad mouthing Charleroi.
Yeah, you know what? And there was actually a newspaper clipping that came out and spoke very highly of the work that Charleroi has been doing and continues to do. Absolutely. And I think, being that we are doing so much in the virtual space, and even when we were talking about this town hall, we wanted to do it in person. Executive director, we were talking about, can we do it in person? And but we had a feeling weather was going to be a thing.
Yes.
And so we moved it into the virtual space, which now we're glad we did. So thank you for your words, Executive Director, and thank you, Attorney Murphy. Thank you, Larry, for being with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anita, if we can,
sure.
let's shift it over to the chat. There's a question in here. If
chat?
someone can someone explain the incident that inspired this gathering?
Oh.
And if I may, I'd like to turn that over to definitely Corporal Allen, and feel free, Attorney Murphy, like to add anything to it. It's
Sure.
Public information that the Pennsylvania State Police are in active investigation. So let us be mindful that there may or may not be answers to the questions that we have, but I'll turn it over to Corporal Allen at this time to share with us what he can.
Attorney Murphy, I think you're a little bit better equipped to talk about what had happened. So I'll piggyback off you if you don't mind.
No problem. It appears to have been an unprovoked incident in a Walmart. The victim of the incident was an African-American woman. She's actually an immigrant. She's a citizen now, but she immigrated. a man looked like he was like the typical thing where people film a TikTok. Here I am at this supermarket, or here I am at this resort, and I've run into so and so, and he shoots this kind of reverse screen video that a lot of us have done with friends and at events. And it started out innocently enough. He said, "Oh, are you so and so?" And the the victim here, a middle-aged woman, very nice lady, walked up. You could even see, she says, "Oh, this is fun. The young man's doing a TikTok. We're going to be in the TikTok," or whatever we wanted to call it together. And she's smiling. And really without any kind of explanation, a whole bunch of words that we don't, civilized people don't use about, each other came out of the man's mouth. And these particular types of words were very not nice things to say about Africans. Um, and you could tell the woman was actually shocked. There was this beautiful smile on her face. It seemed like something nice. We're going to do a TikTok together, and boom, it's even nastier. And she had a hard time getting away. Her shopping cart got stuck. Guys, this is an unlawful act called harassment. Everybody knows that's harassment. And as Corporal said, when you do that, and you that harassment is based on someone's ethnicity, and that doesn't necessarily have to be because of racial things, but it could be because of things like what country they're from, or even the religion. Um, there's an enhancement there, and you're getting into relatively serious criminal area there. In addition, when you do that sort of stuff to people, they can sue you, depending upon what you've said, and about what you've said. There's defamation lawsuits. He's broadcasting this on the internet. If you, I mean, this one was pretty shocked by what was coming out of that fellow's mouth, and I kind of was too when I saw the video. Obviously, I wasn't experiencing it in real time with a much larger, much younger guy saying these things to me. Um, but this sort of stuff, people can have older people can have heart attacks. They can end
Sure.
up in the doctor's office, and you're liable for those damages. If you're dumb enough to get yourself in a bar fight and punch somebody, turns out that person's hemophiliac and they die, that's not a defense. You weren't supposed to be punching people. Same thing here. You start running your mouth and scaring people, terrorizing and making them upset, and something bad happens. That could be a heart attack. That could be pushing an epileptic shock, any number of kind of things. But you're not allowed to do this thing in the first place. So you're stuck with the results and the liability for results that flows from that. That's how lawyers look at it, obviously, suing people and get arresting people. I'm sure Corporal has some other ideas too, based
Sure.
on intelligence analysis.
No, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think this is another reason why these things are so powerful, because it shows how the civil side of things comes, on top of the criminal side of things, and
Mhm.
how the defamation and all of the other things that come with it, because of how big of an incident it was, that
Right.
that reached so many people.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate how negative it was. And I couldn't even imagine, what she felt at that time, not only at that time, but what she felt days after, because
Right.
of how many eyes were on that video. And it's so unfortunate, because there are some TikToks going on out there, and they're interviewing people and everything's great, and I'm sure that's what she thought it was. And that's why I think she got so tied into it. And then it just went for a turn. And that's why it's so important to have, the local law enforcement side on here, but also the attorney side, because it's going to touch both type of incidents, whether it be criminal and civil. We're both involved. So I think it's very, very important that everybody knows that.
Um, There's another question in the chat regarding situation at a school. I think the PHRC may be able to help, but I want to ask you this, Corporal Allen. Though in a
Yeah,
school, it seems as if a substitute teacher called a student a racial slur, and it mentions a white peer calls a black child a slur. Also, they mentioned that they went to two different PSPs to report, and they keep batting me to another agency.
sure.
Um, what could they
Yeah.
potentially do with this one?
Yep, I'd love to touch on that. I seen that in the chat earlier.
Yeah.
So, um, being that it's at school, and depending on if that school has a school resource officer, and then also depending on if that school resource officer has arrest powers, right? Because that's another big one. It's I'm sure that's why she's being bounced around to all type of different agencies to see, who can do what. And unfortunately, in law enforcement, sometimes that happens, right? Hey, it's not in our area, it's in their area, go there. And then, eventually people are just like, I don't want to do any more work, and it is what it is. But it's very, very important that this gets reported. And this may be something that she can reach out to me for, so I can guide her to do the right thing and get this reported the right way. Once again, why it's so important to have these specialized positions, because this is my specialty. So I also work heavily in the school districts all across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and this is not the first time I've seen something like this happen. So one, it needs to be reported definitely to the school. Because the schools, whoever's being reported to, should be a mandated reporter. They are now at justice to do something about it. So whether that be Childline, whether that be something to get it to the right police department, and then obviously that police department to thoroughly investigate exactly what happened. So if she's being bounced around, not getting anything done, please reach out to me. I'll put my information in the chat. You could go directly to me, and then we'll talk more about it and get you the right person. I'll be more than happy to help you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And if
I'm
we
aware.
can, let's do just a quick circle back to the panelists. I'd like for each of the panelists, can you share just briefly, what are the roots of hate? Can we turn it over to Jacob?
That's a big question to ask. And yeah, I guess putting me on the spot a bit. I'd say, there's a variety from, the personal and kind of the larger political ones. I think, oftentimes people can find a way to express the hate they're feeling inside or personally, or due to, personal or societal circumstances, through something that's been, articulated, whether it's by political figures, the media, hate groups, or whoever, the people who kind of give you an avenue where you can express things in a way that feels particularly real. So I think, there's definitely a combination, sometimes personal factors that are driving it, economic factors. But a lot of when we're looking, I think in this context, we're looking specifically at like hate targeting communities, hate targeting specific racial groups. And, in this context, targeting an immigrant community, someone who it appears the person who perpetuated the incident was not personally aware of. There was an already clearly articulated ideology, a way of talking about things that, was able to kind of channel whatever hate this person had outwards to someone else, and, seemingly to blame them or the entire community for the sorts of things that they're experiencing. I can't, speak too much to the particulars of that. But yeah, I think oftentimes, there's why these things are being expressed in certain ways oftentimes has to do with kind of these larger societal narratives and the sorts of people who are, creating these sorts of convenient frameworks, or frameworks that kind of can feel good, even if they don't necessarily actually address the underlying issues that are driving someone's the misfortunes that they're experiencing in life, or the sorts of things that are actually impacting them.
And then if I can just add on to that, then how do we combat American racism based off what you say are the roots to hate?
Also a bit of a challenging question.
I could jump in a little if it'll help,
Yeah.
Jacob.
Thanks a lot.
No, yeah. See, I mean, I agree with everything Jacob said. But in the answer to how to combat, the biggest weapon or tool in our toolbox is education.
Yes.
Open, honest, discussive education, not shutting down differences of opinion. I used to say in my history classes that there, as far as I was concerned, there were only two universal truths. One, the Civil War was about slavery, cut and print, and two, the Nazis never had any good ideas. Everything else, if you could provide viable evidence, actual credible evidence to support your thesis, you can say anything you want. You just have to be able to back it up. You have to be able to show that there is actual historical evidence to support whatever perspective you're going off of. Um, it's all well and good to be in, the TikTok or Instagram community and just, be one of the keyboard warriors and saying, this is this because of this, and then your evidence is like, I saw someone else post it on TikTok. Well, that's not evidence, right? That's not what we as educators, that's not what we teach. We teach you to find verifiable evidence, verifiable factual based evidence, and when that type of education, especially, social science and humanities education is being attacked, as it is, it becomes easier and a um, more of like a free for all in terms of how we can justify um, whatever kind of hatred or whatever kind of misinterpretations that exist. I mean, like I have at least 8 different books behind me about Holocaust revisionism, written by people who claim to be experts, one who even has a PhD. And let me tell you, as a former college professor, if you have published a book and in one page you cite Wikipedia 8 times, I'm sorry, bro, you haven't done your research.
Yeah.
Like there's like you might have earned that PhD in the 1970s, good for you, but yeah, man, I'm sorry, Wikipedia ain't a source. So what I would say is uh, be open to different perspectives. Be aware that your argument, which I would argue is defined as an opinion plus evidence, um, is not the only one out there, and that if you are going to have these discussions, be sure you actually have that evidence, or at least that scholar to back you up from. Because if all you're doing is finding some site online, I mean, you can prove anything, right? I mean, hell, my dad's a veterinarian who used to work on a farm, and people are still taking ivermectin for COVID, and that is horse medicine, people.
Mhm.
I still see ads for if you want to get rid of COVID quick, take ivermectin. And all you got to do is click on that link, and it's just some guy who's like, I'm a doctor. And you're like, yeah, are you though? You know? So,
Thank you both, and just
I think
wanted to hear from the experts. How do we? What is the root to hate? How are we looking at this? What lens are we looking at it through? And then how do we combat it collectively? And for me as well, education first and foremost. You have to know just the history of policing, even, right? And I put in the chat the link to Corporal Allen's contact information. They offer free training to include the history of policing. And I remember when we received it, my first question was, how true is this training? And hands down, it is true all the way to how patrol began from slave catchers and all the way on up. And you have to say it. You have to say that truth, and sit with it. And then how do we move forward, right? So I thank you both for those 2 questions on the spot. I'm going to turn it over to Joe West. He has his hand up. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, the question was, why do we call these guys they're terrorist groups. Let's call them why you just call them domestic terrorist groups? They should be treated like any other terrorist group, like a drug cartel or anything else. And and in which the federal government can use the local FBI and local state police to go out and seek these groups out and find. There's nothing in the Constitution that say you have to like somebody. I used to tell people that when I was president of NAACP. We got to quit bringing butter knives to gang fights, and they got guns. They are what they are. They're a terrorist group, and you got to treat them like a terrorist group. And to answer the question earlier, the Nazis rejected the American Ku Klux Klan. They thought they were stupid and unorganized. And the other question you had was about where did hate come from? Hate comes all the way back from, I'll be here for, you have to get a 4-year degree. Pope Nicholas, who justified slavery of Black people in the United States, is a learned behavior. That's what it is. And it comes from your household. And you learn that. And unless you have people who are raising you and teach you that everyone is equal, then you'll be okay. But the question is, why don't we call these domestic terrorist groups? Because to me, a hate crime, all crime is hate crime. You take a baseball bat and I take it to your knee, hit you across the shoulder. I think me and the police and I are gonna, I think the police and you are gonna figure out that I don't like you because I just hit you with a baseball bat. So that's a hate right there. So, but my thing is, why don't you call these groups domestic terrorist groups and treat them like any other terrorist group? Go after them and use a task force to go after them, file a sell groups or some shut them down, just like you do a foreign domestic terrorist group.
Corporal Allen, can you speak to that? Can you also speak to the actual definition of a hate crime? Because if I were to smack someone, here's my New Orleans coming up. I'll hit somebody upside the head, baby. That's one thing if I do that, but it's another thing if I hit him upside the head and say something else, right? And it's attached to a potential protected class, and then that would be the definition of a hate crime. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So anything, race, color, anything against or shows hatred towards race, color, religion, national origin of another person is going to be, a hate crime. And once again, in Pennsylvania, it has to be attached to an actual crime, right? So just for your example, Ms. Levels, if somebody punches somebody, okay, that is going to be some form of assault, depending on, the type of injuries. Could it be? Yes, it could be a harassment, kicking, shoving, punching, all that stuff. No injury, going to be harassment. Simple assault could be, bodily injury, right? Aggravated assault could be serious bodily injury. That's all fine. But if that incident now stems from some sort of hatred towards what that person looks like, what that person believes in, things of that nature, and we can prove that, then that's where that ethnic intimidation enhancement would attach to harassment, simple assault, or aggravated assault. But once again, we need to prove that as law enforcement, and that is our jobs to do when we get called to those things. Same thing with criminal mischief or vandalism or anything of that nature, right? One of the Miss Levels made fun of me for my PowerPoints, but I love my PowerPoints because I have pictures that I could put up there and I could ask the crowd, is this a hate crime or is this not a hate crime? And I have one in there, and it's a lady crying and it looks like she's in a church. And in the rear of her, it says, "Go back to Africa." And it's spray painted on the wall. So, obviously a lot of people say, yes, it's a crime, but is it a hate crime? And because of the nature of what is written on the wall, then yes, absolutely is a hate crime. So it would have that institutional vandalism and enhancement to whatever crime we would consider that. Because it's a religious facility, whether that be a church, a synagogue, a mosque, anything of that nature, that's where it will be. I totally agree.
Could you add on terrorism? Then say, okay, this person's a terrorist. So you attack the whole group. So this person's basically a terrorist. Why you gotta put them in a separate category because they're white males? They are a terrorist. That's what a terrorist is. Yeah.
Mr. West, I am with you, brother. I agree with you. I think you're on the right path. I truly believe that. I only can do what the PA State Police can tell me what I can do. But once again, I do appreciate what you're saying, and I'm right with you in agreement with what you're saying, because you're right. They operate just as such. But again, we can only do with exactly what the PA Crimes Code has pushed, and I think it's important for us to, again, I'm always the biggest cheerleader of things like this, but this is the only way we get stuff pushed. This is the only stuff we stand strong with any laws that are pushed, is by talking about it. And I can't, agree more with Ms. Meck in regards to just education. That is a big thing that I push. I'm always, whether it's at my college teaching job or whether it's in front of 5,000 Pennsylvania state troopers, we are going to talk about the history of policing. We are going to talk about our history, because we need to understand where this stuff came from. We are going to talk about our biases. We are going to talk about culture diversity awareness, because the Pennsylvania State Police deals with everybody. And we need to understand that not every culture is like the one that we grew up in. So it's very real when it comes to talking about the elephant in the room and making sure that we look in the mirror a little bit, and we keep our biases in check. Because I always say, we all have biases. We can't get rid of them. And every single day we're adding to them. But I know one thing, as a public servant and as a customer service representative, which is what I always call myself, because that's what we do as troopers, we better keep our biases in check. We better make sure they don't negatively affect who we deal with on a daily basis. We always got to look in the mirror every single day and make sure that we're not negatively affecting who we're dealing with, because we are public servants. So I appreciate your question, and I appreciate you listening to me ramble a little bit.
No, that was perfect.
I would
I must
also
say,
sorry. I would also sort of jump in. First of all, I appreciate the question as well, and thank you, Corporal Allen, for everything
Yes,
you
sir.
do and everything you said. But there is a historical issue around labels, right? Like what is the purpose of labeling things the way we do? Is it could it be for legal reasons? I would refer to Attorney Murphy about, the legal term like domestic terrorism. What constitutes that? There's probably a legal term with that versus hate crime. Um, are they all the same thing? I mean, it depends, I guess, if you're looking from it on a ground floor perspective, or on like in terms of like the law and society and policing. Those are different aspects. Like, I mean, like racism is racism, right? No matter who it's against. Racism. I used to tell my students that imagine racism as this like big baby sitting on a cloud that just wants to be played with. It doesn't care who's playing with it and what direction it's being pointed. It just wants to be used, right? Racism can go in any direction, and I can more than happy to go into my own, uh, way I define or I talk about racism based on my 9.5 million years in grad school, but I can do that at another time if anyone else would want to listen to that. But the point is well taken, Mr. West, that like you can call it whatever you want, but the problem is that there are systems in place in this country where we have given labels to these things that those labels then carry a certain a gravitas or a certain amount of uh, meaning or perhaps punishment to them, um, and what was considered domestic terrorism even pre 9/11 is certainly not what it is now. Or go back, you know 20, 30 years, 40 years, even a hate crime wasn't the same as it was now. Hell, racism isn't even the same as it is now. My expertise is anti-Semitism, and anti-Semitism sure as hell isn't the same as it was even 3 years ago. So
Yeah.
all of these terms and words, they're constructs that change very often, and that requires, again, I'm assuming here because I'm neither a lawyer nor in law enforcement anymore, but that requires our both policing and prosecuting of this. When those terms and when those situations change, I would imagine, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that we have to adapt to those changes in terms of how we charge or prosecute those things.
Yeah, if I may, um, I want to go back briefly to revisit what Mr. West said.
Hmm.
I think the question that was raised is a difficult question for some, but not a difficult question for others. I'm a national expert on race relations. And so if you ask me what seems to be the root, is rooted in white supremacy. And I think that's what Mr. West was getting to. Right here, you have 5 eras of American oppression: Native American genocide displacement from 1492 to 1847, chattel slavery from 1619 to 1865, Jim Crow segregation from 1877 to 1964, the war on drugs, or what Michelle Alexander calls the new Jim Crow, that's 1971 to present. And now we're in the 5th era of American oppression: ICE occupation, mass deportation. And so for a lot of us, that question, some grapple with, but for a lot of us, we don't. 246 years of slavery, 1619 to 1865, 99 years of Jim Crow laws, 1865 to 1964, 86 years of lynching, the work that of Ida B. Wells, 1882 to 1986, and then 14 years of civil rights fight from 1954 to 1968 and ongoing. It's a diseased democracy. That's the title of my soon to be released book. It's a diseased democracy, and the way that you treat it is like an addiction. There is imperialism, there's capitalism, there are people that benefit from dividing us, but also benefit from a hierarchy. It's the oligarchs, it's the plutocrats, it's the fact that we are divisive. And so Paul Kivel talks about how to combat American racism. David T. Wellman talks about the portraits of racism. The reason why I think it's important to call it for what it is not just racism, it's endemic of American culture. It's American racism. And so I think that what Mr. West is talking about is, and I'm not saying the panelists is like this, we kind of nuance it. Once again, not the panel. We know for a fact that African Americans and people of color could not go to January 6th the way whiteness did. When African Americans went to the Million Man March, there was a lot of suspicion and a lot of people that was saying that, you know, something is going to happen. We know that crack epidemic that has hit the African American community. And my county of Philadelphia, there's a specialized location called Kensington where you can go get high. And so when we're talking about the roots of racism, is rooted in white supremacy. It's the work of Martin Luther King, the work of Ella Baker, the work of Ida B. Wells. W.E.B. Du Bois wrote an autobiography on the white abolitionist John Brown. And John Brown talked about the problem being that of white supremacy. And it's not an indictment of white people. The last thing I'll say is, and I just said this most recently at an NAACP event, white supremacy won't die until white people see it as a white issue they need to solve rather than a Black issue they need to empathize with. The root of what we're talking about of evil and hatred, I'll put my social work hat on. I can do a Bronfenbrenner model. I can look at things from a P-BEST phenomenological variant of ecological systems theory. That goes out the door. It's human brokenness, it's insecurities, but it goes back to what Mr. West said. We look at whiteness differently. Dylan Roof was a terrorist who went into a Black church and killed Black people. The folk who killed Emmett Till, the folk who blew up the 4 churches, the church with the 4 Black young girls in Sunday school class, that's rooted in white supremacist behavior. And so America has to deal with the beauty of who she is, but we have to be able to talk about those challenges. And that's what Martin Luther King spoke about when he spoke about Beyond Vietnam, why I oppose time to break bread, or time to break silence, why I oppose the Vietnam War, Beyond Vietnam, excuse me, right now. And that makes a lot of people mad, not the panelists. That is a hard question, I believe, for anyone, Anita and Mech, but for a lot of us, like Joe, Mr. West, excuse me, and myself and multiple others, it just comes natural. I don't have to grapple with what's the root cause of evil and hatred. White supremacy is the tree. One of the branches, I believe, is anti-Semitism, effective prejudice, xenophobia, homophobia, AAPI hate, anti-Black racism, All of those are the branches of this tree of hate that is rooted in white supremacy. And that's not an indictment, but the democracy was built on that. And that's what we see now, Attorney Murphy. That's what we're seeing now, colleagues. White anxiety, white violence, white replacement theory, make America great, demographic shifts. And it's not saying all whites have this high level, doctor, of anxiety, but you see it as a historian, we're upset. We're upset on a lot of levels. And I'm not stereotyping anyone. In my very diverse community, a white couple moved on the block, Anita, we welcomed them. But I've been in communities where Black people have moved in, all white communities, and you got the N-word spray painted on your furniture or on your car and things of that nature. And so we have to be able to walk in love, but we also have to be able to call it for what it is. And what we're seeing is the challenges of this democracy, and white folk are starting to experience it now. And that does not make a lot of people feel good. The situation in Minneapolis, folk are experiencing that now. Kyle Rittenhouse was able to walk by folk with a gun and nobody said anything. And we have enough whites who are on that side of the color line fighting to combat American racism as well, the work of Joe Fagan. And for those who may push back and say, it's not in a book, it is in a book, because that's how we learn. We have to be able to read. You have to read Dr. Malecki's work. You have to read other people's work. And I'm telling you, only way that we're going to be able to move forward, I believe, is if we organize, mobilize, boycott, and I'm stepping out of my role as the executive director of PHRC, and we the people recognize that we've all been sold a bill of goods and the billionaires are winning and we are being further marginalized and oppressed. I just wanted to add that. It is a difficult question. It's just one that I've been able to study as a professor and as a person that this is not an intellectual exercise. I will say this though, the fact that you asked that is you mustered up the courage to ask that. And for the panelists who answered it, Corporal Allen and others, thank you for just being organic and fluid and authentic in the moment, because all this is difficult. They blame those of us who are having something like this and not the thing that led to this. It's similar to Colin Kaepernick. The knee was more threatening than the anthology of police brutality that Jill Nelson talks about, from slave catchers to slave patrols to police officers. They're not the problem. It's Colin Kaepernick who took a knee. And so that's why we continue to see differences in our society, because we're looking at things through a different lens. That's what Joe West was talking about. And the professor too, everybody's saying the same, but we see it differently. Joe West is absolutely right. We call them white terrorists, folk are upset. The executive director said white terrorists. I've not harmed anyone. I've not burned any cross. You don't have a Black Ku Klux Klan. They've never existed. There's never been an existing of Black Ku Klux Klan. We as Black people have problems, but we're not a problem people. White people have problems, but they are not a problem people. We all have problems. And so that's where that beloved community is very important. And I'll stop there because I see Alan and others who have their hands up.
I will just piggyback on that and just say, first of all, thank you for that. And second of all, it just reinforces, again, honest, open, discussive education and why the study of history is so important. And I think what emphasizes why the study of history is so important is because of how much it is being attacked and how much it is being, let's call it, for lack of a better word, discolorized, and how you're only taught Western history, you're only taught, and when they say Western history or Western civilization, that's not what they mean. So.
Oof. Thank you, Edie. Thank you for everyone being so brave. These can be very uncomfortable. These are uncomfortable, uncomfortable conversations to have. And so thank you for being uncomfortable. If there's some moments you're feeling uncomfortable, thank you for being uncomfortable. This is courageous conversations to have. So thank you, Executive Director. Thank you, Dr. Long and Jason and Corporal Allen and Attorney Murphy and just everyone for being here. We do have, I think this will probably have to be our final question. Let's see here. We have a hand raised. Alan Cashaw? Yeah. We can't hear you when you get off mute. There you are.
Well, yeah, I'm off mute now. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Good. And Corporal Allen, good to see you. We do have a relationship.
Good to see you, sir.
My question is in relationship to the Civil Rights Division of the PAAG's office. Do they prosecute bias crimes, or do they just take in complaints? Can somebody tell me from their experience, is that something I should keep in my arsenal as a place to take criminal bias crimes to? Because at this point in time, we only have remedy in the civil courts. And that would be our remedy in the criminal courts. So does the Civil Rights Division of the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office, do they prosecute bias crimes? And
Mr. Allen,
Corporal,
that's a
ask you
great
to answer.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Mr. Allen. I'm going to defer to Corporal Allen and Director Meck. And if there's anyone else on the call from PHRC, I see the regional director from Pittsburgh. I think the deputy chief counsel is on here as well from Pittsburgh. If someone can step in, I don't know the question to that, but that's a great answer. If someone knows that question, feel free to join in the beloved community and let Mr. Allen know, because that's a great question that Mr. Allen asked.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that one myself.
I don't know the answer as well. This is Morgan Williams, but I will put my email in the chat. And if you want to shoot me an email, I will reach out to the person who supervises that unit and get an answer for you.
Mr. Cash, I would also piggyback. If they have a civil rights division, they need to be notified no matter what. Whether you call PSP, your local, borough police or local police, the PH. I'm a big fan of notifying everybody if something needs to be investigated, because once again, I think we've done in the last couple years, we really did a great job with building relationships amongst law enforcement agencies and other community-based agencies and attorneys and things of that nature. So I'm not a big fan of just reporting it to one individual. My trust isn't with just one. My trust is with everybody. So I think, if the state police can't do something, then I know the FBI can. So that's why I always stay in connection with them. I know the PHRC, they have resources that I may not know about. So I think if they have a civil rights division, they need to be notified no matter what, whether they can or can't do anything.
Mr. Allen, we can connect you with a Corbett Anderson who's out of that civil rights division, so we can make that connection for you. And once again, as everyone knows, right here in the moment, in real time, here we are, a state entity, humble enough to say we don't know. And I think that's the beauty of what tonight really highlighted as we go back to Anita, is that we're learning from each other. Everyone's opinion is their opinion based on how they see the lens. At the end of the day, though, we're in a dark time. As the person who is running the PHRC on a macro, meso, micro level, I'm always looking at it, applying logic, philosophy, science, inquiry, analytics, metrics. We are in a dark time. Sociologists and social scientists say that we are at a crisis of legitimacy. And so no matter your faith or your non-faith, when people say, oh, we'll just wait it out, we'll get through this, economics, macroeconomics, the London Financial Times, the economists are telling us that we are in a recession. It may not feel that way to us, but I just had a regional director in Pittsburgh share some challenges that folk are going through in her circle with regards to finances. We all know that. We're seeing children who say, I'm gonna go ahead and go to Capella, or I'm gonna go ahead and go to trade school. I'm not going to Brown, Dartmouth, Cal, Berkeley. I'm not going to Princeton University. I'm not going to, Stanford University because I can't afford it, right, Anita? We see young people saying, you know what, we're gonna move back home because the mortgage is just too much. We're having people say, I know that my interest rate is a 2.75, and that's a historical unicorn, but I'm a refi because I got to take some money, some equity out of this house just so that my children can stay in private school. So any news outlet that's telling you that it's okay, it's going to be okay, I'm going to go to what Doc said, which is, where's it at? Doc told us there's two things to look at, and I appreciate you, Doc, for saying that. Where is it at? Show it to me and history where it's going to be okay. It's at a tipping point, but we get up every day at PHRC and everyone on here that's in your kind of vocation, and we try to simply say, how can we do what we are called to do? When Derek Bell talks about the faces of the bottom of the well and racism is permanent, it doesn't mean that we don't wake up and we try to address it and try to dismantle it. Dismantle it till we have no more breath that is in us. That's what I'm called to do. That's what some of us are called to do. Anita, public apology for, infusing myself, because as you know, I try to just sit back, but I was inspired by this panel to muster up what's inside me to speak at this very moment for what we're going through. And I thank the panel. I thank you, Mr. Allen, for asking the question. And Joe West, I see you're in Ohio, Beaver, Ohio Valley. We need to get your phone number, sir.
He's a
We
part
need
of
to
our
get your phone.
advisory council. He's
I
our
thought
advisory
that's who
council
that
in Beaver.
was.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought
Yes.
who that was. Back to you, Anita, and Director Mick. I thought that was Joe West.
Mr. Allen, I would also say, in addition to all the information, I put the link into SPLC's report hate into the chat.
Thank you.
And we have a phenomenal team of lawyers and people who might be able to help in a situation like that, if that is at all helpful to you.
Thank you. Yeah, as we're wrapping up, please, Jason, is there any final information that you want to potentially share about Bridging Divides initiative with Princeton? How folks can potentially be in contact with your organization?
Yeah. So on our website, we have a lot of kind of the broader reporting that I was citing. I can also add, particularly around this incident, I know one of the dynamics was the person who was targeted potentially had some of their personal information that was used to target them. So I'm happy to share at least one of the guides that we share around doxing, specifically how to protect your personal information, and then if you have been targeted, how to make sure going forward that you know how to protect yourself so you can operate safely, and to know going forward how to control what sort of information is out there, so you aren't potentially targeted more. Also, yeah, you can reach out. I can share our email as well. It's the best way to get in contact with us. We also have a directory I'll share of local organizations that help either provide resources around de-escalation, help people train, specifically in contexts where, people pushing back on this. If you're worried about, people showing up, how do you equip yourselves to push back against bad actors? So this has, people in Pennsylvania and other communities, if people are just across the border, a lot of people who we've been in touch with, we've worked with, we've vetted, who've been really helpful for people on the ground. So yeah, just all these resources are super helpful to make sure that people, are equipped and are able, one, to not remove themselves from the public life, like Attorney Murphy was saying, but also, if we're looking at kind of next steps, and I know we've got a few minutes left, so I guess I can kind of use this as a bit of some of my, closing comments, but a lot of people have kind of talked about this as like a moment, not just to highlight an incident of hate that's happened in the community, but also to kind of to gather people here, to educate people, but also as a potential opportunity for people going forward, to feel, one, that they're not alone. I mean, I think some of the toughest things, I've talked to a lot of people who've been the target of harassment for all sorts of different things, for being queer, for being an immigrant community, and that's an incredibly tough and an incredibly isolating moment where you are targeted But ultimately, there are organizations within civil society, but also looking at the PHRC and how quickly you guys step in, how quickly you provide resources to the community, and likewise, Corporal Allen, Attorney Murphy, Alon, has been super responsive. So I think, going forward, being able to kind of equip people, empower people, not only to be able to withstand these things, but, going forward. I mean, Charleroi has repeatedly been the target. And I think, it's really been a model. But I think, making sure that people are equipped with as much as possible going forward, and using this as an opportunity to build coalition and step forward, I think is incredibly important.
Thank you so much, Jason. We have Attorney Murphy. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. I know you were mentioning that you possibly have to leave, so thank you for being here with us.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me. I'd come back anytime again if you'd have me.
Thank you. And Corporal Aaron Allen, we've had our trainings with you. I think the one training as far as the history of policing, it was amazing. I just want to let folks in the community and the audience, please get in contact with Heritage Affairs. Would you like to say anything to wrap up?
Yeah, absolutely. So I put all my information in the chat. My personal cell phone that comes directly to me. My email comes directly to me. I try to bypass any sort of dispatch or any sort of anybody else that would answer the phone at the state police, which are thousands. So please just reach out to me if you guys have anything that you need guidance on. We do the free trainings. We've been extremely busy with those. History of policing, implicit bias awareness, de-escalation strategies, culture diversity awareness. And I believe there's one other one as well, but we do those free of charge for law enforcement. But we've also branched out to businesses or local agencies. It doesn't matter who you are. If you guys want to sit and learn, then we will come do that free of charge. So please reach out to me. I'm thankful for everyone being here, and thank you for the opportunity for me to speak. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. I know, Dr. Alana, I don't know if you want to say any quick things before I send it over to our executive director.
No, I just want to once again commend you all for continuing to do excellent work and for continuing to build up and continue to build up your community and can build up your community response and continue to engage with people. I think what PHRC is doing is a model that other states should I guess model. But I would also sort of echo what's been said, and I put my email in the chat. And while my personal expertise is in anti-Semitism, I do have my degree in 20th century white supremacy movements. That is the history that I've been studying for the past 16 or so years. And I would be happy to attempt to address any questions that anyone may have. And because if I can't answer it, I likely have a colleague or somebody who may be able to. So please feel free if there is anything, and this is obviously to you guys at PHRC and to this entire community, if there's anything myself or SPLC can help you to better understand or better educate, I will gladly be the point person for you.
Thank you so much. And that we thank you. And I want to hand it over to our executive director. Before I do that, though, I want to thank everyone who's here. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. And I have to give a shout out to the Pennsylvania Human Relations Commission that we also offer trainings at no cost to the Commonwealth. That's a part of the work that we do, the work that we enjoy doing. We also have our advisory councils, and one of our advisory council members is one of the ones who asked the question. And we're so excited about the representation that we have on the ground throughout the Commonwealth. And I've also put in the chat ways that you can apply. It's the link there, advisory council. It's really big. I don't know how it got big, but it's our advisory council application link. Feel free to apply. And thank you all for being with us. It's 8:02. I'm going to hand it over to our executive director. Thank you all.
Just really briefly, thank you, OC Levels. I just wanted to say to Jacob, we're going to be reaching out to you even more. We're affiliated with the Ohio State University Divided Community Project, but we want to be, you're right in our backyard. We're headed out to Chicago to be with Bill Furlock and his team sometime in March. So we want to work with you. to the great doctor. Director Meck has already shared that you're willing to possibly work with PHRC to do a report around white supremacy and looking at things from a Pennsylvania perspective. So we're going to be following up with you. To Corporal Allen, just continue to lead. This is no ingratiating, placating, or displaying with false generosity. Your presence and that of Slayton and Tim Green allows us, for those of us who come from marginalized and oppressed communities, not buying in our own victimization, to see policing in a different way. And we have a social justice police committee, and we're always looking at tying in how communities respect police, see their humanity, but how police also see, communities of color and other communities, and not through the veil of surveillance and suspicion. So thank you for who you are. My first time being in this space with the lawyer, thanking him for that. Anita, thank you for allowing, Meck and myself, to chime in. You moderated a tremendous panel, as you always do, with thoughtfulness and kindness. And everyone who's here, it's 37 people at 8:04, and you still availed yourself. So thank you for the panel for just being selfless. And thank you for everyone for being in this space, and continue to support PHRC, continue to critique us, continue to hold us accountable, because we are being as we become. And God bless everyone. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good night. Thank you so much.